Guys, joining us on the show today is the man who year after year has won the Golden Globe for Submission Radio Journalist of the Year award. And we don't even have an award show, but in all seriousness, this man's live coverage is second to none. Repping the Mac Life. Oscar Willis, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
And before we wrap this intro up, I suppose I need to mention the second man. When the police asks who to call when you find a dead body in the woods, this man's name is the natural answer, the problem solver, the original equalizer, long before Queen Latifah, pushing out more great articles in Fighters Only magazine than Kerry Bradshaw. Jim Edwards, thanks for fitting us into your busy schedule. Boys, get your dry martinis ready, because Submission Radio in the City is ready to begin.
I preferred the first intro, but I'll take it.
What do you mean? You're the Kerry Bradshaw of MMA. Just riding along on your laptop, pondering life. You know, does he like me? Doesn't he like me? Darren Till likes you, all right? He likes you, Jim.
Just thank God London's still under lockdown, so the people there are safe from Jim.
No one's ever safe. Anyway.
All right, so Jim, seeing as last time, seeing as you like intros, last time we introduced you as the UK super spreader, it's only fitting that we ask you what your reaction was to Alex Volkanovski and Brian Ortega being named the next coaches of TUF. Shout out to Alex Volkanovski, who had a bad battle with COVID, so we're not taking that lightly. But it just kind of goes to show how, despite the months of, teasing, the UFC really didn't have anything locked in for TUF. And it kind of literally took a highly anticipated title fight falling through to open an opportunity for available and willing coaches. I guess, what is your reaction, Jimbo, to these set of coaches for TUF?
Like you said, first of all, best wishes to Volker, as you guys would call him. Obviously he's had a real tough time over the last few weeks and months. So yeah, best wishes to him. It came as a surprise to me. I thought the UFC were going to be wanting someone like Colby Covington, someone that was going to kind of stir it up a bit. I think what we've got are two nice guys coaching both teams. And I think for a series that is struggling, for a series that needs a bit of dynamite in there, I just don't think they were the right guys. I understand Volkanovski is going to be out for a bit. He's going to be suffering what sounds like long COVID for quite a while still. He's still quite ill by the sounds of it. But at the same time, I just don't think these two are the right people to have as coaches for a series that needs reviving. I'm really anxious to see who the fighters are going to be, because we need some fireworks somewhere if TUF is going to live on, and TUF mustn't die. Pride did. Will TUF next thing to die? I don't know. What? I mean, can you tell me that we're going to get fireworks with Volkanovski and Ortega?
No, there's going to be lots of handshakes. They're nice guys, and it's good to see them getting paid. But
Ortega sent him a love note on IG, saying get well soon on after his title fight got cancelled on 5 days' notice.
Jim doesn't believe in well wishes.
Watering his plants. What is that behind you, Jim? Is that a dead plant behind you next to the dead bodies? What's going on?
It's where he got his hairstyle from.
I just thought if there was ever going to be any animosity, surely you're going to have a bit of angst against a guy that had a fight cancelled on 5 or 6 days notice. Even that wasn't enough to create a bit of friction between the two. So for me, if you're asking me if I'm excited about a TUF series that is going to be coached by Alexander Volkanovski and Brian Ortega, love them both, great fighters, really looking forward to their title fight, but absolutely not. I won't be tuning in.
Is that a fact, Jim? Or?
Not yet.
Okay, cool. Hey, Oscar.
I don't dish them out willy-nilly. That's not a fact yet, but I'm just not excited for it.
This is the worst thing about this chat, is it's just going to be in jokes that the audience is going to be what are they talking about?
Yeah, they'll cotton on by the end. Happening. Yeah. If they stick around. Oscar, interesting as well that what Jim mentioned in the fact that, it's a show that struggled. And did the UFC crap the bed here? I mean, how hard is it to put together a coaching, and nothing against Volkanovski and Ortega, great guys and great fight, but no fireworks there. I mean, you had Colby Covington in the mix. You could even look at doing something like getting a guy like Israel Adesanya and Darren Till in the mix, even though Darren Till is injured, just to sort of entertain fans. You could even look at not even having the coaches fight at the end of the season, just bringing in interesting personalities. Do you think the UFC is sort of missing what it kind of takes to make this an entertaining show and why fans are sort of tuning out and not really acknowledging it as much as they used to?
Well, look, I mean, this is the first time it's going to be on ESPN or ESPN Plus, and if we think back to January, the talk was it was going to be Conor and Khabib, which I think would have been a pretty good way to splash on the new platform. That fell apart. Then it became Jorge and Colby were much discussed. It's going to be them. Then that fell apart. And look, I mean, all the best wishes in the world. I don't necessarily think you're going to get the same sort of dynamic out of Volk and Ortega, and I think even those two would probably admit that. And maybe the UFC are going to try and take this coaching thing and play it as like, okay, so instead of focusing on the coaches' rivalry, we're going to start focusing on the coaching itself and the dynamic of the athletes, and what they did with Chael and Jon Jones back in the day, tried to make it a serious tournament. But as Jim so eloquently put it, you know, if your big return is going to be this, and I think we've all seen the reaction to the coach's announcement. It was a bit underwhelming. I mean, it is the best way to break news these days, but Brett Okamoto just kind of put it out there on a Friday night. It wasn't this big press release that
it's not the only thing he puts out there on a Friday night, Oscar.
Let me tell you. But or puts in fact. But it's you know,
what a great article.
Like, yes, exactly. He puts in the work. But it's not the release I think we were all expecting, similar to Brett's release. But it has that. It's a bit lackluster. It just is.
MMA and social media.
Can I just add something as well? Like, where are we gonna get these fighters from? Because like we have drained the well of like all fighters pretty much worldwide, for the most part in the US. I would say a lot of Europe. Like, who the hell is going to be on TUF? Because if you're half decent, you've either been called up because of a COVID cancelled fight in North America, and you've pretty much been signed up if you're free and out of contract from the likes of Bellator or another major organization from Europe. You're already in the UFC. So who the hell are we going to get to actually compete in the TUF series? Like, we're scraping the barrel.
I believe it's men's bantamweight and middleweight, but you have a good point, because anyone who's been marginally talented has either gone to the contender series for Dana or they've been signed up like Hamzat was randomly. So yeah, it's going to be kind of curious. Maybe they just pick loads of like random amateurs, and that'll be exciting because it'll just be a shit show like the coach selection. Who knows?
I keep checking my email.
Nothing yet, Jim. You don't get many emails, do you? Oscar, just quickly there, a lot of people also going like, why don't they do like a comeback season where you bring in a few personalities and sort of make it entertaining? Why do you think the UFC hasn't pulled the sort of the trigger on that kind of show? There was so much success with that Matt Serra season.
And then a few years ago, like Joe Daddy and all those guys. I think it'd be a good one. Like you mentioned, Jim, there's not really too many unsigned talent that they can go to at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of, it's kind of especially in the pandemic era, the UFC has become more of a machine than ever. Every Saturday night, for better or worse, we're putting two people in a cage and they're going to fight each other. It doesn't matter if they're good or bad. They're getting in a cage and you're going to watch it. So maybe because of that, it's harder for fans to really think and look back at stuff that's been... I mean, I feel fans kind of ignore Anderson Silva at this point, so let alone who they're going to think of on past seasons of TUF and that sort of thing. So I think it's just kind of a hard balancing act, because, you know, you could bring someone and be like, this guy used to shout, "Let me bang, bro," and half the people currently watching the product won't know who that is, even though, you know, they'll get very excited about it after watching that clip. So I think the idea of a throwback season kind of, it appeals to us, but I don't necessarily think it'll grab the mainstream audience, which is presumably what they're going to go for now they're on ESPN.
Just get Rampage and Rashad. Who cares about the fighting? Just get them to coach.
Yeah. I want to see them going face to face and call me a bitch right now and again. That's very exciting.
There's too many unsmashed doors laying around, and Rampage needs to return for that. But you mentioned Colby Covington before. We'll get to him in a second, but just sort of on the welterweight division, I got one for you, Jim. What did you think about your boy Leon Edwards? And I say your boy because, well, you're both British, so he's automatically your boy. But Leon Edwards landing the Nate Diaz fight after the disaster that was the Belal Muhammad fight. Who would have ever predicted that Nate would be, you know, interested in fighting Leon Edwards? Ultimately, why do you think Nate chose to return it against Leon, of all people, Jim?
The answer to all those questions is I don't know. Like, I would have loved to have seen that meeting at the UFC headquarters where someone in the room was like, why don't we put Leon Edwards together with Nate Diaz? Like,
it's like the meme of like the guy getting thrown out the office window.
Yeah. Like, who ever came up with this? It sounds so dumb. Like, why would you ever pair Nate Diaz against Leon Edwards? Leon Edwards is going to destroy Nate Diaz, and now you've kind of got this weird thing where Nate Diaz is going to have lost, 2 on the bounce. Leon Edwards is kind of, probably going to get a bit of a bump from it, but at the end of the day, everyone knows who Leon Edwards is right now. I think everyone in the MMA community knows who he is. People just don't like him. So why pit him against one of the most popular fighters on your roster? Like, people are probably going to hate him a bit more after this, because he's going to absolutely, I think he's going to piece Nate Diaz up. You saw what Jorge Masvidal did to him. I just don't understand the matchmaking here. I honestly don't. I think Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington was there for the making. I don't understand why that kind of didn't get done. If you wanted to put Leon in front of an audience more, why not put him opposite Colby as like a TUF coach? I think they probably would have.
Ask these two that, because they speak to him every week.
Colby wasn't available this week, boys, so we got you instead.
Here we are. Well, I think the thing about Nate and Leon is, if you look at that division and you look at who Nate kind of matches up against, really, you run out of names. I mean, you have to get to like rank number 10 before you start thinking, okay, maybe. And I think out of those top names, Leon is probably up there with one of the people he could do well against. I think there's a reason he asked for 5 rounds. Don't shake your head at me, Jim. I think there's a reason he asked for 5 rounds. Nate probably thinks he can weather a storm. I actually think I like Leon, but this will be the most Leon Edwards thing. He could go in there and starch Nate Diaz and get a big rub, but it's more likely he's going to go in there, just kind of wrestle and control him for 5 rounds and be disliked even more by the mainstream than he currently is after stabbing Bilal in the eye. So I think it's an interesting matchup. I'm curious that they've used this one to be the first 5-round co-main event. I think it'll be fun having Nate Diaz back, but like Jim said, I'm curious. The meeting, UFC sometimes do things with long-term booking in mind, and this doesn't feel like that. And where does either man go after this one?
Just quickly, the meeting's one thing. The phone call also to Nate Diaz, like when they called him and it was like, "Hey, we got a fighter for you. It's Leon Edwards." I reckon Nate would have been like, "Yeah," and they would have been like, "He's in, boys." But then surely someone would have been like, "Just wait for it. He's clearly joking."
Oh yeah.
You never know, man. Like, Nate might look at Leon and be like, I could beat him, and he's got this big win streak. Out of all the people, he would be the easiest person for me to sell a victory with.
Or someone at the UFC office thinks this is an April Fool's joke that never actually was a joke, and was like, "Oh, we actually booked it in. Okay, I'll see how this plays out." But Jim, I'm just curious. All right, let's just say Nate wins this thing. Who knows? Because he came in against Pettis. He put in a great performance. We know Nate can look different depending on where he's at mentally, depending on what happens on the night. If he does, Jim, beat Leon, what is the outcome for him? What do you think is this UFC plan for him? Are they planning for a possible Masvidal win over Kamaru Usman and doing a rematch? What do you think is a long-term plan for Nate? Because like Oscar mentioned, you go through those top 10 names and there's not many guys in there that you're like, like this is going to be like a Nate Diaz, an easy fight for Nate. So what do you even do with him if he beats Leon Edwards, a guy who's on this crazy winning streak?
I mean, you would then go for the winner of like Usman, Jorge Masvidal, which will be Usman. So then it will be Nate fighting for the title, which is a good thing. But at the end of the day, like maybe you've just spelt it out there. Maybe they think that Usman's gonna 50-43 Masvidal again, and then we get kind of Diaz off another loss, Masvidal off a loss, and you kind of do the rematch. So maybe that's the logical. Maybe that's kind of the way they think it will play out, and then we get Usman beating Edwards after that as well. So. Yeah, I mean that's probably the most logical way that you kind of look at it, whether he wins or loses. But I think this might be another situation where they're just kind of like, let's get Diaz a fight. Doesn't really matter who he fights. We've got another kind of like strong card to go alongside it, and let's just get him on the card because at the end of the day, he is probably going to sell quite a few pay-per-views just being on the card himself. But there's no point even talking about him beating Leon Edwards. I genuinely just don't see it happening. I think Leon Edwards has got is pretty much.
You can tell Jim doesn't go to events anymore. Just the hardest dates available.
Jim's like, I'll never see these people anymore. You're like Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes. I don't care.
I mean, when was the last time Nate Diaz even talked to us, like outside of like a press conference anyway? So at the end of the day, like, I genuinely just don't see it happening. I think Leon Edwards is going to run through this guy, and I then think he'll get what he deserves. He deserved that title shot for a long time. And I think he'll go on to fight Usman. I don't think he'll beat Usman, but I think he'll get what he deserves, which is a title shot.
See, it's interesting because if Masvidal can win, and then if Nate can win, which are two massive, massive ifs, you got to think they're both the underdogs. Then you got a massive fight. You got the BMF rematch. You've essentially got two belts on the line, kind of winner takes all scenario. But then if it is Usman, if Nate can beat Leon, and then Usman is still the champion, which that would be my pick. Do you think Nate ends up with that fight, just because he said so many times, Oscar, that he doesn't want to fight wrestlers, and Nate's a little bit unpredictable, and stylistically Usman is just a terrible matchup for him. I would never say that Nate's scared, and he's not scared, but I don't know, I wonder if Nate has some kind of other agenda here. What do you think, Oscar?
Well, I think if the Masvidal fight was there, I think they could possibly do that. But I do wonder if the UFC don't look at Nate, and maybe we see evidence of that with this 5-round co-main, where they think he doesn't need to fight for a title. He doesn't need a title belt. He's his own entity. We can just have him fight anyone we really feel like it, and it'll be the same deal anyway. So I could actually see if Nate won, the UFC and Nate coming together and being like, well, look, there's no point you fighting Usman, so let's give you someone else you're interested in fighting in, and trying to work it out that way, you know? I could see that happening. I don't really see Nate beating Leon, while it would make the most amount of money, and so that you can't ever rule it out. I can't imagine Dana really sitting at a press conference and being like, Nate Diaz, Kamaru Usman, anything could happen in this fight. I can't really imagine him doing that. So I don't think Nate would get the title off this win, especially now that Gilbert and Wonderboy are booked as well. I think Wonderboy has the path in front of him. Or, of course, we've seen how this just played out in this very division. Maybe Colby just chills and just walks in and fights the winner anyway in August or September.
Yeah, that is the weird thing as well. It's like, Nate, why welterweight, man? Stick to lightweight. So many great fights there. And you could almost argue that if you want to make the most out of a Nate Diaz fight, you maybe even put him in there with a Justin Gaethje, something that can excite people in the meantime, and maybe get Justin Gaethje back in there, or if Nate can figure out a way to beat him, sort of back in there too. But Colby Covington, Oscar, just quickly, where does he fit in all this? You just mentioned him. So, I mean, the title fight is not far away. I think he was talking to Helen Yee and the Schmo and sort of mentioned that, you know, I'm just going to hang back and sort of see what's going to happen here. Do you think he's a strong contender, especially if Masvidal is able to do it? Or is it still going to be a situation where Masvidal just kind of refuses to fight the dude and because of their personal rivalry sort of gives the title shot to someone else?
I believe it's more likely Colby would step in and fight Usman if Usman won. I feel like Masvidal and Colby, for whatever reason, that never ever plays out, and I don't think a title belt will be the difference maker. I think Masvidal will either want to fight Nate again, or they always seem to miss the mark on their negotiations with that one. But I could see, Dana has mentioned multiple times, Usman Covington's one of the best fights ever. I could see him, if let's say Wonderboy eked out a decision over Gilbert Burns, then Dana would turn around and be like, well, Colby's the guy, he's always been the guy. How do you look that 5-round fight? How do you ever look past that? So I could see Colby still being there. It would kind of bum me out if fighters now found that it's a genuine tactic to just sit on their ass and then just get a title shot. Eventually, that would kind of bum me out, but I could see it happening.
What about Leon, Jim? Like, if he can get the rub against Nate Diaz, I just have this like not personal concern for Colby, but like there's a lot of fights and they're high profile. There's a lot of high profile fights in the division that could be the next title shot. If Leon could go in there, extend his streak, get the rub after beating Nate Diaz, I mean, who would blame the UFC for being like, all right, that's the guy that gets the next title shot? Like Oscar mentioned, if Wonderboy can go in there and get a big win over Gilbert Burns, the UFC could say, all right, that's the guy that gets the next title shot. And it becomes easier when, if for whatever reason Dana White and, I don't know, Colby can't get on the same page, Dana can always spin it and say, look, this guy's been sitting out since the Woodley fight. Is there a concern here that Colby Covington could just get overlooked again?
A concern that you should get overlooked. I don't think it should be a concern.
Did you hear that word?
Sound the alarms, all right?
If Leon beats Nate,
we worry about all the fighters in the welterweight division, everyone. They're like our children.
Why would I be concerned with a guy on like a 9-fight win streak getting a title shot? I wouldn't be concerned for Colby at all. That said,
I mean is, do you think he's playing it right? That's what I'm saying.
I wouldn't be surprised if Colby, even if Leon did win, and the UFC, for whatever reason, were like, hey, let's turn Usman around quickly, or maybe Jorge falls out. I wouldn't be surprised if they put Colby in there. Like, Colby versus Usman is a much bigger fight than Leon versus Usman, which we've already seen as well and wasn't as close. Like, Colby versus Usman is a lot easier to sell. And I think all of us probably here would much rather see Colby versus Usman again rather than Leon versus Usman. So I'm not really concerned with Colby. Colby will get his due. He will get his rematch at some point. And I personally think that's probably the best fight in like at 170 that the UFC can put on right now. So I'm not concerned for him because I know he'll get that rematch. But if Leon wins, it would be ridiculous if he doesn't get the next shot.
We'll be talking about a fighter that you are concerned with, Jim, in just a second. So just you wait. But Oscar, you mentioned
Marvin
how this.
Vettori.
How did you know? Oscar, you mentioned how maybe this Masvidal Covington fight doesn't come together. Do you think a Masvidal Leon Edwards fight would ever come together if he becomes champion? Because he's another guy that Hoya is not too fond of, and it doesn't seem like he wants to do business, or he doesn't want to put money in the pocket of some of these guys that he's not really vibing with in the division.
Yeah, Masvidal as champion intrigues me for that very reason, because he's made no secret of like, I don't want to fight this guy, I don't want to fight that guy, and he just kind of sticks to his word. But when he's a champion, I wonder if that changes. Does he then try and fight these guys that, you know, he'll get pay-per-view points, he'll still make a big chunk of change for? For some reason, I feel like if you look at the matchups, I would probably say out of the two opponents, Masvidal Leon Edwards is a better matchup for Masvidal. I don't think Colby's like a fantastic night out for him necessarily. So I think if he became champion, those are the two real options for him. He did say he wanted to rematch Wonderboy, so if Wonderboy won, maybe he goes that direction. But out of the two, I could see him going for the Leon fight rather than the Colby fight, even though I believe the UFC would try and make the Colby fight.
Yeah,
massively.
Just splash a bit of cash on the boys and make the fight. Speaking of splashes, our good friends at Manscaped have brought out a signature cologne, a refined cologne, the Manscaped signature scent to go along with, you know, if you're there in the bathroom shaving your balls in the wee hours of the night preparing for a hot day and you realize, oh shit, I don't smell too great. Bam, Manscaped have you covered. You get that sweet cologne. It is calm and inviting with a citrus burst and a woody masculine finish. A bit like me after a couple of drinks. No, seriously, it's light, approachable, and gentlemanly. You'll be like the James Bond 007 in the clubs, you know, everybody will smell it on you. Or maybe you'll be like Ric Flair, you know, when he was like, look good, smell good, and party all night long. It's also got a beautiful bottle and a hyperallergenic and vegan, which is good for somebody like me who has really, really terrible skin, in case you haven't noticed. But Manscaped are giving away 20% off on all their products. You can get the cologne and also shave your balls with the promo code submission. You can shave their balls if you want. You have the tools with the Manscaped Lawnmower 3.0. And yeah, fantastic company to work with. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. And speaking of splashing cash and cash, get that cash dispenser out there, because have a look at this man's wallet. That is the Ridge. They are a sponsor of this program. That bad boy holds up to 12 cards plus room for cash. Over 30 colors, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. There's 40,000 5-star reviews. Durable material, which means the wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. You can buy one wallet and carry it for life. And the guys at the Ridge don't only have wallets. Check out this weekend duffel bag. It's weatherproof. I don't know if I can fit it into the camera here, but I went to Tasmania. There was some dead bodies, and none of them, look at that, no blood, nothing. So the Ridge is the place to be if you want to. Seriously, I'm off to New Zealand later on, and they have the best stuff if you want to travel. Nothing gets wet. Everything has pouches and all sorts of shoe totes and things that you can use for when you travel. Make sure to jump onto theridge.com right now /submission. Use the code submission and get 10% off. And how about this? Because this is something that the Aussies aren't used to, and the Kiwis. Free worldwide shipping and returns. If you're not happy with it, the Ridge is happy for you to send it back. It's 10% off theridge.com /submission. Use the code submission now. But okay, speaking about people that Jim cares about, his bestie Marvin Vettori. Jim, let's quickly talk about this fight that's coming up this weekend. First of all, your reaction when you saw that Darren Till had to withdraw injury from this one. It seems like this was a huge opportunity for the man to get a title shot against Israel.
Well, after crying about Darren being out, look, that was in all seriousness, that was a great fight. I thought it was going to be. I thought that fight, whoever won that, Marvin or Darren, I thought they were legit going to be probably the next man for Israel Adesanya.
Sorry. Did one of you guys start driving on the freeway on a motorbike by any chance? Sounds like you got abducted and put in a truck.
I don't think so.
Okay, good. I think that fixed it. All right. Jim, carry on.
Right.
Oscar's been saved.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I just thought I was really obviously disappointed when that fight fell out. But I think Marvin versus Kevin Holland is a good opportunity for Marvin to put himself there right in the shop window. If Marvin absolutely demolishes Kevin Holland this weekend, I think he's right there. I think we got Whittaker versus Gastelum coming up. Whittaker, for whatever reason, just kind of has previously said a few times he doesn't. For whatever reason, he doesn't really want that rematch. Now he apparently does, after saying he doesn't want it. I think Marvin's like
Dana
right
White
there.
Over here.
Marvin said, Marvin's the guy that's pushed like Israel Adesanya the furthest apart from Jan, obviously, but at 185, like Marvin's the guy who's had the best success. So for me, if he wins and he wins impressively on Saturday, he's right there in the mix. Israel was pushing hard for Till. For whatever reason, Israel was like the biggest like Darren Till supporter like before his fight with Jan.
Second to you only, Jim.
Sorry?
The biggest Darren Till supporter, second to you, obviously.
Maybe not, but at the end of the day, I think. Look, at the end of the day, I think we know that the biggest fight that they can make it that they can make at 185 is Darren Till versus.
She's got out, Jim.
And that's a fact.
There it is.
There's the catchphrase. Money's been made.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank everybody for.
Yeah, I think for me, man, the Darren Till situation is just kind of sad because this fight is being held at prime time European time. It's like 8 a.m. local time in Vegas. So they've really set this up as this battle of Europe for Darren to, well, and potentially Marvin, but mostly Darren, to win and catapult him into the title shot that Adesanya and Eugene clearly wanted him to have. So for Darren to get injured at this stage, I think it's pretty tough for Darren's momentum. You know, he lost to Rob. It was a great showing, but he's been out for a while. And I think I get the feeling with Darren that everyone wants to be his biggest fan, except for Jim, who is his biggest fan. But everyone wants to support him and wants to follow him because of his social media. And I just feel like it's multiple times now he just hasn't been able to convert it into the goal that he needs.
Let me ask you, Oscar, you've done a lot of great interviews with Israel Adesanya. So if you were in his shoes or if you were trying to read his mind, what do you think he does next? Like, Darren's with a broken bone, you're looking at about 6 weeks out. In the meantime, you're going to have to get healthy again, then start training again. You know, you got this Marvin versus Holland fight. Now, Israel doesn't seem too keen on fighting either of these guys. Marvin, he's already beaten, and he said he'll never get a rematch. And Holland, I think, just annoys him too much to give him that fight. Huge told us that the only two guys, he said clearly, he said there's no Paulo Costa, there's no Marvin Vettori. There's two guys, Till and Robert Whittaker, because he's one of their fellow brethren. So if you're Israel, who likes to stay active, and you're like, I'm coming back to 185, and there's not really a ton of options, I don't know, do you, and it'll be, imagine if Kelvin Gastelum beats Robert Whittaker. It's just all, well, actually, even if he doesn't, it's just regardless, pretty much all rematches for Israel Adesanya in the near future. What do you think he does, and how long do you think he's willing to sit out for at this point?
If Kevin Holland hadn't had the performance he did against Derek Brunson, even if he had lost, but still looked very competitive and took it seriously, and then took a short notice fight with Vettori and beat Vettori, I could see them making the Kevin Holland Adesanya fight. I think because of that Derek Brunson thing, no matter what Kevin Holland does on Saturday, even if he knocks him out, I feel it's going to be a bit of a tough sell. So for Izzy, I'm sure you probably start looking like, well, instead of these big gargantuan fights that I've been trying to get, you know, stage by stage, you'll probably just take the Rob Whittaker rematch and just make it like, okay, this is the defense I'm meant to fight, and this is the fight I'm supposed to do now. And he said in the past that he wants to, you know, look after the division in that way, be the champion that fights the real contenders. So maybe he just takes that attitude towards it. But yeah, it's worst case scenario in terms of promotion, I think, having Darren get injured at this stage.
And Jim, I'm wondering, and chime in as well, Oscar, because Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya too. Over here, that's a big fight. Like, people want to see Rob have another crack at him. Rob was able to beat Darren Till. He was able to beat Jared Cannonier, two guys who are contenders. And Darren Till, obviously, people want to see him fight Israel. We have crowds here in Melbourne. So there is a possibility you could do a Marvel Stadium. Like, they're doing football games, and it's and they just opened up the Tasman bubble between Australia and New Zealand. Jim, am I missing something here? Why is the UFC not trying to book this Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya rematch? And plus, there's bad blood there. There's bad blood. There's a bit of a rivalry. Am I missing something here, Jim?
No, I don't think you're missing anything. I think that what you just mentioned there, that kind of Aussie to New Zealand kind of like travel corridor that's just opened up, actually could be the deciding factor in Israel Adesanya's next fight. I think that could play a big thing. But Rob Whittaker did go a bit weird. Like before the Till fight, he was saying that
Here we go again. He was on the show before, all right? If you listen to Submission Radio content once in your life, you would have seen that. He wants the fight. He wants the fight.
Yeah, but on multiple occasions, he said on different programs and different channels, even in post-fight interviews, that he wasn't like. I think his exact wording was he wasn't desperate to get the rematch in, which was
just
just
an Aussie thing, Jim. We've got this tall poppy syndrome thing. Like we try to not overdo it. I think that is a fair point. With Robert Whittaker and a lot of the athletes down here, like the footy players and the cricket players, there's an emphasis on not being too aggressive and not wanting to call your shot too much. And I think it does end up costing them. And I think there is a misconception here because I know that like. He said this thing, and then he's been on the show a few times after he mentioned in the press conference, was like, no, I want the fight. Let's make the fight. And then Dana White's like, well, he doesn't want the fight. So he's got to be careful about how he phrases things. But he definitely wants – I mean, would you rather fight Kelvin Gastelum on a fight night card in a main event, or would you rather have another crack at a world championship in front of a sold-out Marvel stage?
Also, just quickly, you never want to come across as chasing somebody. You know, you don't want to be that guy who's like, you know, please, I really want that title shot. Please, I really, really want to fight you. If you're courting a girl, you're not going to be like, I really, really want to bang you. You're going to play it off cool and be like, whatever, I'm cool either way. Even though you're dying on the inside when she sends you, you know, a K after writing her a, you know, 7-page text. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to be chasing Israel, and I think Rob understands that.
Understand there's levels to this.
I don't agree. I think you not about the courting a girl stuff, but what I'm saying is Robert Whittaker, like that one time that he came out after that press conference and was like, again, like I understand what you guys are saying, but the fact that he literally said in a public forum that he's not really concerned about the rematch, I think just played against him massively.
Has Rob ever been concerned about an upcoming fight though? Like when you ask Rob, you know, who do you want to fight, this and that, has he ever said like, this is the guy I want to fight? Never in his career.
I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is, if you say you don't want to fight, Dana White's going to use that against you for like the next 10 years, even if you mean it or you don't mean it. Now we know Rob Whittaker probably wants to fight Israel Adesanya again. I think he deserves to, even after beating Darren Till. I think he'll beat Kelvin Gastelum, and I think that should be the next fight. I hope that is the next fight because I'd love to see it again. And like you guys say, I think it's going to be a huge fight down your neck of the woods. So yeah, I mean, I hope the stars align. But at the end of the day, outside of that fight with Whittaker, the Till fight is probably the only thing keeping Adesanya at 185.
I always took it as that, not that Rob didn't want the fight, that he didn't want to chase it. You know, that was his whole. That's what I took it as. That he wanted to fight, but look, I've got other priorities in my life now. I worked myself to the bone. I'm not going to chase it. So that's what I took it as, and I don't think that translates into Dana White's language. You know, I think Dana expects guys to be like, oh, fucking give me that fucking fight all the time. So I think, like Dennis said, it's they don't want to seem too keen down there. So that's what I was taking as. I'm sure Rob wants to fight. Rob doesn't like Israel. I'm sure he'd love to have another go at him. I'm sure he looks at that Yan fight now and thinks, oh, I can really do something here. So once you get that hatred out of your heart, Jim, and that bizarre bias you have towards Rob away, then you know you'll realize that is the fight.
And before we break down the fight, guys, just want to quickly mention our sponsor, MyBookie, because when you're making picks and you want to make cash on fights, there's only one place to go, and that is MyBookie. They have better bonuses, more MMA odds than any other sports book, period. Plus, you've got NFL, you've got the NBA, so many crazy things happening right now all over the sports world. Make some cash with MyBookie today. You can sign up with promo code SUBMISSION, and MyBookie will match your deposit halfway up to $1,000. Make sure to visit MyBookie online today. That's MyBookie. And don't forget to enter the promo code SUBMISSION. Get that bonus. Make some cash this weekend. And, see if you can make those right picks. I know that MMA is a bit tough to pick, but how sweet is it to make an extra couple of bucks if you make those right picks? make sure you do it today. Now, let's talk about the fight. Oscar, we were talking about this Kevin Holland Marvin Vettori fight, and it's an interesting one because here you got Kevin Holland coming off this weird fight to Derek Brunson, where he's like, yeah, maybe there's a little bit too much talking. Like maybe I kind of stuffed things up a little bit here. And you got Marvin Vettori, who looked incredible against Jack Hermansson. And man, this guy really gave Israel, I reckon, a run for his money when they first initially fought. And it looked like he's improved a ton since that fight. Obviously, we saw that in Jack Hermansson win. How are you looking at this fight? Because here you've got a guy in Marvin who's pretty pissed that he's not able to get his initial fight with Darren Till. He knows there's a lot on the line. But also Kevin Holland realizing he's kind of getting a second shot at this.
Well, I think you can just say Marvin Vettori is pretty pissed all of the time. That seems to be his default energy. In terms of Kevin Holland, yeah, just hateful. But in terms of Kevin Holland, I think it's an interesting one, right? It's very rare that fighters get an opportunity at immediate redemption. I found that Derek Brunson performance personally to be incredibly frustrating to watch. But I also wondered if Kevin Holland had a lot of sort of attention. ESPN MMA did that fantastic video of all of his talking in the cage. He was getting more attention than ever. It felt like he was getting a real sort of spotlight put on him. And I wonder if that played into his performance. Like, oh, these guys want me to be the goofy guy. I'll be the goofy guy. And then also there's the other alternative that maybe the pressure of fighting someone at a top level when actually his kind of dream of a title shot is closer than he thought. And maybe it's a bit of a crutch, right? I can't be accused of not doing well because I didn't even try. That's kind of how I took it. So I find it fascinating that he's been, not that he's ever going to be humble, but he's been humbled to a certain degree, and I'm curious to see how that affects his performance against Marvin. I think he could beat Marvin. I think Kevin Holland's one of these weird guys that can beat people just by being himself, just kind of not fluke his way to victory, but find a victory seemingly without you realizing how he did it. I like the fight a lot. I actually think it's going to be very exciting because I think if Kevin Holland says anything to Marvin Vettori, Marvin will probably like try and stab him in the neck. So I think it's going to be like an interesting dynamic all fight week. I'm looking forward to their face-off. I'm sure that's going to get heated. I'm excited for the fight, and I think if the Darren Till fight couldn't happen, then this is probably as good a replacement as you could get. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it being at like lunchtime, my time as well. That leaves a lovely long afternoon for me to do with. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, actually.
What are you going to do for the rest of the afternoon? Now, don't answer that. Before I go to you, Jim, and get your thoughts on the fight, Jim. I like Oscar. Yeah, I wonder if it was kind of like we're talking after the fight, and I mentioned with Kevin Holland, if it was like a Junie Browning situation where he's like, look, I didn't lose because I didn't really try to begin with. Like I sabotaged myself, like that inbuilt almost reason. I don't want to use the word excuse, but I use the word excuse. I wonder if taking the fight on short notice takes the pressure off. Kind of like, whatever. I'm not supposed to win, and he kind of goes in there a little bit more relaxed. How do you see this one going for your best friend Marvin Vettori?
Once a goof, always a goof. Like Kevin Holland can't change. He's absolutely no chance.
Ricky's back.
He would just be exactly. He would go to default.
He would just really feel, Jim.
Yeah, geez, stop sitting on the fence so much.
I think that's the true Kevin Holland, right? And I don't think he should change it. I think Kevin Holland.
You told your girl that you could change for her. So are you saying that actually behind the scenes he never changed?
Kevin Holland is one of those fighters that has people know who he is. People recognize the fact that he's the guy in the cage that talks all the time, and I think he needs to embrace it. I think he's probably not going to be a world champion, but at the end of the day, people are going to recognize him, and that's one of the hard things to do in this game. So I think he should go and talk to Marvin Vettori on Saturday. I think he should. I think he should just continue to be himself. I think he's a pretty dangerous fighter all over the place. Do I think he's going to beat Marvin? No, not at all. I think Marvin's going to beat him, and I would hate to see Marvin beat like a silent Kevin Holland. How boring would that be? Kevin's probably going to lose, but he might as well talk his mouth off whilst he does it. So I'll be very, very sad on Saturday night if we get a very boring Kevin Holland getting like 50-45 by Marvin Vettori.
Just quickly, I love your picks, Jim. They are now my favorite picks in MMA. They are always, do I think fighter X can win? No. End of pick.
Roll credits. I like Jim because he's like Charlie Sheen in the Jeff Ross roast. Like the composure of the man as we throw bombs his way is just impressive. So let me throw this question your way, Jim. Well, before we wrap up, I want to quickly cover this heavyweight situation because Ariel Helwani reported that the UFC are eyeing the Francis Ngannou versus Derrick Lewis rematch for June. And although the timing doesn't work for Francis, you think they might try it for later. It's a pretty clear message to Jon Jones that they probably aren't willing to pay him what he wants. What do you make of this whole situation? Do you think we see this Ngannou Derrick Lewis fight, and this Francis Ngannou Jon Jones situation actually never happened? Because don't forget, these guys had a pretty non-exciting fight the first time around. I don't know if it's the right move here by the UFC.
Do you think this happened in the same meeting that they put together, like the
Edwards and Diaz meeting? Everyone got drunk before the meeting.
Like, maybe they just had like a crazy meeting where they just like literally just threw darts at a board. Like,
was it yesterday at the UFC headquarters?
Yeah, like what was going on? Like April Fools is actually happening. Like no one wants to see Ngannou versus Derrick Lewis again. Like we saw it, and I unfortunately was there. I think I was either front or second row for that one, and I never want to see it again. Like look, if you put Francis Ngannou and Derrick Lewis in a cage again, chances are it's not going to be as bad. But at the end of the day, we have a clear path to one of the biggest UFC heavyweight fights in. I don't want to go over the top and say history, but it's a very, very, very big fight for the UFC heavyweight division. All you got to do is put Jon Jones on one side of the cage and Francis Ngannou the other, and we've got like an absolutely phenomenal UFC heavyweight title fight, and it looks like they're going to mess it up. I don't want to see Derrick Lewis versus Francis Ngannou. I don't really want to talk about it. I just want to talk about Jones versus Ngannou.
Let me ask you this though, Oscar. How much do you think the UFC care though? Like if we never get Jones, Francis Ngannou, I almost feel like we the fans care more than the UFC. I think they're just kind of like, look, we need someone to fill cards. We need titles at the top of cards. Francis is ready to go soonish, theoretically. Derek is ready to go. All right, let's do it June. June doesn't work. All right, let's push it to July. Bam, we've got a main event. And I think if they keep doing that, ESPN will keep paying them money. And then also you've got Volkov and Garn targeted as well. So, I mean, those guys could very well be the next guys in line, and it's just going to be like a Rolodex of guys for Francis Ngannou to fight. So if that's the attitude they're taking, how much do they need Jon Jones for this fight, and how much leverage do you think he has in this situation? Because I'm getting the sense they're saying to him, you have no leverage here.
Yeah. I remember one time Dana White was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said, I have to make Jon Jones Anderson Silva before I retire. I have to do it. I have to do my job as promoter. I can't imagine those words ever coming out of his mouth anymore. It feels like the times have changed, and like I mentioned earlier, this era seems to be just churn them out, churn the cards out, just keep it going. We saw Masvidal, Conor, Jon Jones all last year share their frustrations, and the UFC didn't really want to budge. And I suspect, and this is complete just guesswork here, but every so often you can look at Dana and think he's decided that this is one of his personal battlegrounds. When people said you shouldn't go doing events during the pandemic, you could tell to him it was a challenge for him and he wasn't going to lie down. His tone in the post-fight press conference when he talked about Jon Jones a couple of weeks ago, it felt to me that he was like, not only do I not think Jon Jones should have any more money, I'm guaranteeing he's not getting more money for this fight. It just felt like one of his personal conquests. And I think if that's the case, unfortunately, the UFC is set up in such a situation where they can just outlast the fighter. Do I think Jon Jones needs the money? No. But I think if Jon Jones wants to fight again, he's probably not going to get $30 million to do so, which you can easily argue that if Deontay Wilder can fight for that much money but for less pay-per-view buys, then the greatest fighter, by Dana White's own admission, should probably get similar wages. So for me, I think it's very much a message to Jon Jones that, look, if you want to fight for the heavyweight title, you're doing it for your contract. And I believe, like Castro said, I can easily see that fight never happening because they're just going to keep churning out Derrick Lewis and Ngannou, or like, probably what's going to happen is they're going to do Derrick Lewis and Ngannou, Derrick Lewis knocks him out in the first round, and then it's all gone.
Well, true to his friend, we appreciate you going raw dog on us, Jim. And Oscar, it's been way too long, guys. Make sure to follow Oscar and his incredible work at the Mac Life. And make sure to follow Jim. I think he's at MMA_Jim. Guys, thank you so much for coming to the program.
Jim will follow you.
That's it. Watch out. Make sure you're on private. Thank you so much, guys.